Well, 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 my darling night owls and seekers of the strange. November's here, and the air carries more than just a hint of winter's chill. Tonight, we step into a world where history and legend and mystery intertwine like shadows in the moonlight. As a month dedicated to honoring Native American history, it's the perfect time to explore the deep significance of their stories and traditions, tales that resonate with wisdom, tragedy, and the undeniable touch of the supernatural. Native American legends are more than just stories. They're vessels of history and culture passed down through generations to preserve the essence of their people. These narratives often hold truths about the land, the spirits that guard it, and the lessons we're meant to learn. Nestled in Long Island, New York, this picturesque yet foreboding lake is said to be the eternal home of the Lady of the Lake. According to lore, she was a young and Native American woman whose forbidden love ended in tragedy, her heartache transforming into spirit bent on revenge. Between the mid-1800s and the late 1970s, at least 160 drownings occurred in the lake. Coincidence? Perhaps. Or maybe the lady still roams, her sorrow and vengeance woven into the very fabric of the lake. This month, we honor the rich heritage of Native American history by unraveling the deeper meanings behind this haunting legend and exploring how it connects to the culture and traditions of those who first called this land home. We have a very special guest to help us do just that. The brilliant Maria Capp, director and writer of the new film Lady of the Lake, is joining us for a conversation. We discuss the inspiration behind her film, how she captures the eerie beauty of this tale, and what it means to bring the story to life on the big screen. So, my darlings, grab that cup of something warm, keep your blankets close, and prepare for an evening of mysteries, chills, and a touch of Miss B's signature flair. Shall we begin? Eerie Echoes with Miss B starts now.
Eerie Echoes with Miss B. Season 1, Episode 6, The Lady of the Lake. Once upon a time, when the world was still alive with wonder and shadows crept long across the earth, there lay a lake, shrouded in whispers. A lake that knew secrets and sorrows too great to tell. Its waters were said to be bottomless, reaching not into the earth, but into the very depths of despair. By day it gleamed with an inspiring serenity, but by night it stirred, restless as if recalling some even more ancient woe. The Secatoga people, whose ancestors walked this land before memory itself, held the lake as sacred. It was said that spirits moved within its depths, their unseen hands tugging at the unwary, their cries carried on the cold night air. None dared disturb the lake's dark mirror, none save for one. She was Ronkonkoma, the daughter of a great chief, a maiden whose beauty was said to cause the very stars to dim in envy. But beauty can be a curse, and her heart, a fragile yearning thing, was not her own. It was bound to a man who did not belong to the land of her people. He was a settler, his face pale as the moon, his voice a foreign melody. Though their love burned brightly, it was a fire that could only consume. Beneath the weeping boughs of the forest, by the trembling edge of the lake, they met in secret, weaving promises they could never keep. The winds of fate, however, are all often too cruel. Word of their forbidden union reached her people, and with it, wrath. The settler was taken, whether to chains or the cold embrace of death, no one can say. Ronkonkoma, bereft and broken, turned to the only witness to their love, the lake. On a night when the moon hid its face in shame, she walked into its waters, her steps deliberate, her breath steady. The lake swallowed her whole, but as it did, she spoke a curse, her voice rising above the black ripples. "I shall remain," she whispered, her words a dagger to the stillness. "This lake shall know no peace. It will take as it is taken from me, until its hunger is sated." From that night forth, the waters no longer reflected the heavens, but writhed, dark and brooding. Each year, it is said, the lake claims life, a young man drawn to its edge, as if called by some unseen hand. Locals whisper that it is her grief that pulls them under, her sorrow a tether that cannot be broken. To this day, on moonless nights, those who wander too close to Lake Ronkonkoma swear they see her, a figure, pale and shrouded, gliding across the surface as if weightless. Her long hair streams like the tresses of drowned reeds, and her eyes are said to glow with a light that chills the soul. They say you can hear her, too, if the night is still. A mournful cry, neither word nor song, but a sound that claws at the edges of reason, echoing across the water like the call of something forgotten and forsaken. And so the lake remains to this day a portal to tragedy, a mirror to grief. Beware its beauty, for beneath its glassy surface lies a love turned to wrath, a sorrow that is boundless, and an eternal presence of the lady who has yet to find her solace, the Lady of Lake Ronkonkoma.
We are so excited because we are interviewing Maria Capp, who is the producer, director, and writer of the film that is available on Amazon right now, Lady of the Lake. Maria, thank you so much for coming on today. We're so excited to talk with you some more about this. And how about you let our people know who you are and what you're doing?
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, Diego, and hello, Miss B. Yeah, I'm excited to share whatever questions you have about this. It's very near and dear to my heart. It's the first feature film that I wrote by myself as opposed to collaborating with others. And I also directed and produced it. I was raised on Long Island in New York. I earned my SAG-AFTRA card when I was 16 for forgot the name of the company. I think it's Martin's Home Decorating Paint, but it was a home, like a smaller version of Ace Hardware or Home Depot. My sister, the youngest one, she had more success commercially on the stage. She booked a couple of things. But then I started to go through that period of time where my boyfriend was more important, and hanging out with my friends was very important. And one of the things I did was I hung out at the lake. I always worked and stayed in the arts. My children had a talent and an affinity, and they were drawn to singing and performing. And naturally, instead of being a soccer mom, I was a theater mom. My children continued to excel and explore their lives artistically, and I continued to have a natural affinity towards the producing side of things and raising money and selling tickets and so forth and so on. When they transitioned into their later years education, higher learning, we ended up all moving out to Los Angeles as a family. When that happened, I basically went to LA. For me was also as an actress. So I, along with my 3 children, we were all going on auditions. And then it just continued through networking, meeting, and being in Los Angeles. When I was there, I just wanted to meet everyone and anyone that I could. To me, storytelling is definitely accumulation of things. Like, it's either very compartmentalized or it's accumulation of experiences for me, right? I don't, everything I write about has some sort of truth to it, whether it's a relatable experience or it's actually rooted in an experience. So for this story, there's a couple of things. First is, I grew up in the town and right up the block from the lake, and spent many summers swimming in the lake, and have very specific real experiences to lifeguards blowing their whistles and getting everybody out of the water because someone was drowning or having a problem. They had to do a rescue. I do have a recollection of one particular instance where people would often swim beyond the ropes, which you're not supposed to do, to swim across the lake. And I'll never forget one incident where a lightning and thunderstorm happened, and of course whistles were blown. Everybody had to get out of the water, but someone was already, in the middle of the lake. And then I vaguely remember hearing about somebody drowning and a boy drowning. And then, of course, knowing that there's this folklore that an indigenous teen, or quote unquote princess, of a native tribe that lived along the side of the lake, was scorned by her lover. And as a result, she drowned or committed suicide. And then every year she takes the life of a man. Now, there are 2 versions. One is a version of a white settler or a colonist, and then he leaves and goes to Connecticut. And so, and marries another woman and leaves her. And then there's another story based on the research that I did that has to do with 2 tribes, neighboring tribes or rivaling tribes, and a young man and a young girl who wanted to be together, but the young girl's father forbid her for being with her lover. So he kills himself and then she kills herself. And then her revenge is, or her sorrowful heart, is that every year she takes the life of one male. So I chose the Romeo and Juliet. I romanticized it for sure. And the other thing I did was I chose not to use, through a lot of consults, I chose not to use terms like chief, princess, and chieftain. Instead, right. I just created an indigenous family who lived in the 1600s, and a mother and father who forbid their daughter from being with a young man that they didn't like or think was right or thought she was too young to be with. And that's really just the grounding of the story. I was in a screenwriting class, and the challenge or the prompt for the week was to write a horror scene, a scene from a horror movie. And that's just not a genre that I enjoy watching or know how to write. So I read a couple of scripts and I watched a couple of movies, but I was still stumped. And the big test was, well, what's the most horrific thing you could imagine experiencing? And then it just came to me like that, and that was a parent losing a child. And then the third thing, which I already shared, is that I liked hanging out with my friends, and we used to hang out by the lake. So I just kind of combined those elements and came up with this story. I did write the story based on Seth Gilliam, who plays the father. I actually wrote it with him in mind, and that was because I was a fan of his work in Teen Wolf, and then I did watch a little bit of The Walking Dead, not the whole series, but I watched some of it. And I like that he was a New York actor. I like that he was trained on the stage. And he's also an actor who, I just found him to be relatable. And I thought this was a job or a role that was unlike anything he's ever portrayed on camera before. So I thought it would be something that he might want to sink his teeth in. And so I wrote it with him in mind. And taking the boat ride, I guess, became more aware of the town's fascination, and I wouldn't say obsession, but just fascination and homage to this legend and to the Native American young woman through art, graffiti, and there's a beautiful wood statue, which we do have in the movie, and then images that have been painted around the lake on cement walls and things like that. So I was inspired.
She's really kind of become part of that community, and they've embraced her, and that's fantastic.
Absolutely. My dad was so cute. He was like, Ronkonkoma on the map. I said, well, Dad, it's already on the map. The lake is a natural preserve. It's the largest body of water, But this was it was fun to celebrate and really capture the authenticity of the community and partner with the Shinnecock Reservation, which is also something I explained how culturally informative and open my mom was. My parents used to take us all the time, every year, out to the Shinnecock Reservation for the beach, lobster, and a powwow. So I was very aware of the Native American presence on Long Island, and had a quest for understanding more of it. And, doing that research, there were so many other stories that I could have told, because the unjust and social and awareness of, I'm walking on, it's not just, St. Joseph's Roman Catholic Church and the seminaries ground, and whose land was this? So I did do a lot of research and grew to really understand and respect the land.
So I have a couple of questions, actually. Going to the legend itself, going to the story itself, the paranormal aspect of it.
Yes.
Did you encounter any paranormal incidences while you were filming? Anything unexplained, ghost sightings?
What I would say we experienced was unexplainable surges and gusts of wind. We also experienced, when we were doing the night shoot, those beautiful shots of the nighttime dark, the moon. That wasn't, we also had another electric storm, lightning and thunderstorm, which came out of absolutely nowhere. There was no forewarning. There was no indication of it in the weather at all. And it went from a beautiful clear sky with a full moon to all of a sudden clouds, thunder, lightning. And so safety became an issue and our shooting schedule became an issue. But as quickly as it came, it passed. So it's almost like it was like a little rumbling, if you will. Energy was surrounding some of the community and the people who were really sensitive. There's a school of thought that most people don't even believe it happened, right? And they think it's just a folklore, it's a story been told over the years. But there's enough evidence to document that something really did happen between two young people, and the young girl was very upset with her parents, and she was very angry and perhaps hormonal teenager, and she did take her life, and then that she's fixed at that time. So the thing that I was told by the people that do believe is that maybe we shot in 2022. So I think maybe in 2019, 2017, there were a couple of tornadoes that happened in Lake Ronkonkoma prior to our shooting. And those tornadoes, one of them, which is unheard of and unlikely to happen here, one of the bigger tornadoes hit the middle of the lake. And so I was told by someone at the Heritage Society that it created a funnel and a cyclone of energy, cloud, mist, whatever. And people swore that they saw the image of a young woman in that. There are some people that swear there's some momentum and some truth to this.
Yeah, the area is really well known for, it's got some pretty interesting things like the Fire Island Lighthouse.
Yes.
There's Mount Misery. Amityville is 15, 20 minutes from there?
Yeah, Amityville is about 30 minutes. It's on the South Shore where Ronkonkoma is central. The other thing I've been looking, I grew up on Mary's Grave. I don't know if you've ever heard that. That's Oldfield or Nissaquag. And that's a horrible story. But when I was a teen, all I knew was we're going to go take a ride to Mary's Grave. And, teen boys would get out their car and go and literally urinate on the gravesite and then get in the car really fast and drive away, looking. And the roads are very narrow, wooded, and hilly, and there's no street lamps, so it's very dark. But foolish teens would get in the car and drive really fast doing this. And later on, I also have done some research on Mary's Grave. It's really quite a horrible story, and it's based on truth. The fact that she comes back and kills a man, not even a young man, just a man. But her story is horrible. Apparently, real farmers lived on land in the Nissaquag-Hedda Harbor area, and she survived her mother during childbirth to a couple that couldn't have kids, and then the mom had a kid, and she passed, and Mary survived, and she helped her father take care of the house, take care of the farm, and whatnot. But he ended up putting her in his bed and having incestual relations with her, and then the story goes, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's written this way. She basically murdered him one night in the bed, and she left him in the bed and would go to sleep in the bed with him there. The town figured it out, or, where are they? Where is he? And when they discovered this horrific murder, they killed her. I don't know if they hung her, burned her. I don't know what they did, but she was murdered, not, killed for her murderous action. And then now she comes back and so visit Mary's grave, and she's buried next to her mother and father. So yeah, Long Island, a lot of juicy ones. There's another one. I don't know if it's Mount Misery, but there's a place by Walt Whitman's home.
Fire Island Lighthouse was, rumored to be pretty haunted by, I think, somebody that actually worked, one of the lighthouse keepers. And then there's, a lot of other very interesting things in Long Island, like, what is it? The Montauk creature, the Montauk monster, which is said to have derived from Montauk. Plum Island, yeah. That's supposed to be.
The Montauk Project, we just studied and talked about this in one of my classes that I teach to film students, and we talked about the Stranger Things, which the deck is originally called Montauk, and it's based on the Montauk Project, and it's based on a lot. I mean, there's so many things, but it takes place and is based on the Montauk Project, which has a lot of unanswered sci-fi.
UFO sightings.
Yeah.
Tons of lights in the sky and all kinds of interesting things.
It's sacred ground. Where are the burials? Where are the cemeteries of all those that come before us who have been here?
A few years ago, I went out to the old Wardenclyffe Tower. They supposedly, the military blew it up. The purpose of the tower was that he was creating a world grid of electricity that would be basically, there would be towers around the world that would send this electricity through the ionosphere, and it would be like an endless source of electricity for everybody.
Oh, wow.
And people obviously like Westinghouse or whatever were like, no, we need to harness that and make the money.
Interesting.
Do you feel like the story of the Lady of the Lake is more of a parable, or do you feel like there's an actual incident that, like you were mentioning, that there's good record that something actually happened?
Well, first of all, you're talking to someone who believes in energy, right? I have, so because of that, what I did, so first from the research standpoint, there's a couple of lines in the movie that is all based on the research. So one of the things is that I chose to tell the story about a young teenager with her family being forbidden to be with another tribe's young son, boy, because the research that I read was that it was a very homogenous, very friendly meeting place. It was very sacred, the lake. So that was documented in the readings. What people did, the indigenous people, how they worshiped the lake. It was sacred. It was a community center. It was a place. People didn't really live on the lake. They lived around the lake. It's the Setauket, the Nissequogs, the Unchucks, and there's another tribe. So we do have Nissequog, Long Island, which is the north side of Smithtown. And now we have Setauket, which is the far east, just west of where Shoreham is. Unchucks, they still exist. There is a small community. So the documentation research historically is documented that there were 4 tribes that congregated together and used this space as a communal. The other thing that was based on research is that young women had the role, and the relationship of water was a very feminine thing. So the lake, the Lady of the Lake, like the lake is feminine. That is documented, and women's roles surrounding the lake made it a feminine relationship. The other thing that I found was that everything that I read that pointed to the direction of a white colonist, and there is one story, they actually give the man's name is Birdsall, Birdsall.
I saw that.
Yeah. For me, that just sounded too John Smith Pocahontas. And so it was just a couple of things. But so I really tried to stay truthful to like the authentic, not fantasized, but something that would be real. So you're asking me if I believe it to be more of a folklore or based on the research. But the research is that the lake was sacred. The lake was holy. The lake was a community. It was a meeting place. The lake this is based on research and interviewing people and articles. It is bottomless because people who have drowned in the lake, typically their bodies are found in the Long Island Sound by Maritime College, by the Throgs Neck Bridge, sometimes even close to Connecticut. Yeah. So, and what's bottomless about it is then this was further affirmed by my friend who is an EMT and a special unit diver. He said that there are, like, I forgot what he called them, but there are tunnels. And if you get stuck in the tunnel, it's like a suction that pulls you out. And it has to do with salt water and fresh water coming together. So I didn't make that up. I just remember that was part of the research
The
validating. Okay,
brackish water, yeah.
yeah, how do bodies end up if they can't find them at the bottom? The other thing is that over years, like I grew up swimming in the lake, and you were able to see your feet and you can see in front of you your hands. But as time went on, and it has nothing to do necessarily with pollution, but based on the research, it had to do with algae, environment, and just growth of this natural water system not having salt, that it became hard to see below. So it got really mucky, the water. So if someone did drown, there is a line. They have no chance coming back up. And then the other factual thing is that there was a lifeguard who had a 32-year career, and he during his 32-year career was responsible or involved with 36 drownings, which were
Minari was his name.
all male. Very few females have drowned in the lake. It is mostly male, and there's been several hundreds of drownings over the course of the years. So you're asking me if I believe, but based on the research, there's enough data there that explains some of the things that make sense to make a physical presence and an energy felt that's very feminine and very strong as it relates to being close to the water. It's not unbelievable that a young girl wanted to be with a young boy and her parents said, no, you're too young to start sleeping around or get married or go over to the other side. We want you to stay on this side. And it's also very believable that that young girl could have powdered her feet and disobeyed her parents and then got in trouble. And in order to be together, I'm romanticizing it, but the information is more believable that teens would do something silly like that, like a suicide.
I love your answer. And I love the fact that you're talking about the energy of the lake being feminine. And it's really interesting. This is something that is very common across all indigenous people of the Americas, all the way from the northernmost tip of Canada, all the way to the southernmost tip of Argentina. These are very, very, like La Llorona in Mexico, there's obviously the story is different, but these are all the energy of the feminine energy, in a distraught sense, in the sense of rage, in the sense of, in the essence of tragedies and stuff like that. It creates such a fold in energy that it creates not just the stories, but, a lot of things that could be unexplained in occurrences, like the drownings that you're talking about, or, La Llorona is something that would never have caught on as a legend the way that it did if there wasn't something associated, an actual occurrences in one way or another associated with them. And we all know that, that our Native American brothers and sisters are very spiritual and have been, eternally very spiritual since as far back as we could go. And interesting. That's why I'd ask you if you had any incidences when you were filming the lake, because when we were in West Pittston filming for that episode, that will release someday in the future. Exciting. That episode, we had a lot of technical things that had never happened to me before. Things with a drone. I was flying a drone. Like, I've flown this drone many times, and I fly them in ADI mode, which is basically in manual mode, so that basically I'm navigating the entire thing. I'm not relying on its internal navigation or GPS system. I'm flying it, manually. And I lost contact the moment that I was flying over the house that we were trying to cover as part of the story. It entirely freaked out, turned off, disconnected from my remote control, and disappeared on me for about a minute, until a minute later it's like heading back home,
Yeah.
And I tried again 3 or 4 times.
What I will say is just being in touch with so the leaves blew, perfect timing. Like, I'd call action and we'd be getting a shot. And then the leaves would blow on the trees in motion that would just, for me, when I looked at it visually, I heard the music that was going to accompany and score. The birds, we had beautiful swans, white swans. We had Long Island geese, Long Island duck, and then, a myriad of other birds. So for me, it's not so much was there supernatural stuff going on, but the energy and the nature of what surrounded us felt like it was very much in tune to whatever the energy is there. So there's a couple of shots that I have with the birds. They flew across the lake on cue, and I captured that. So things like that.
The Lady of the Lake, what a beautiful story. And, obviously there's a lot of tragedy involved in the story itself as well. But what I love the most about it is how relatable it is to First Nations people. Lake Lanier in Georgia, there is a Lady of the Lake story down there where the lake itself, I believe, is man-made construction. But when it was being built, there was a few deaths that happened. And supposedly, I believe the story goes that there was 2 women that died, that drowned in the lake, and they're considered to be still seen many times. And there was a good documentary about it. I remember where I saw it, but I'll look that up too. But the documentary it basically interviewed people that had lived on the lake or that were there a lot. And a lot of the people were definitely talking about, yes, there is for sure an energy element involved in this.
Yeah.
There's drownings that have happened, unexplained drownings that have happened, things like that. And then one person that was interviewed said, there's absolutely nothing paranormal about this lake at all, except for maybe a couple of things. So it's like, okay, well, yeah, there you go. Somebody that,
I think it's really noteworthy for me to say how cooperative and the amount of time and energy that I did get to tell authentically a contemporary and historical, 1600 story of an indigenous people, because I'm an American Italian, right? So I can talk about strufoli and Feast of the Seven Fishes and meatballs and sauce and the importance of who calls it sauce, who calls it gravy, but to tell a story and it be about Native Americans, especially in the industry of showbiz, with such a conscientious awareness to doing it authentically and truthfully. So casting was really important, and I have to do an amazing shout out to Liz Lewis, casting, for really making sure, holding me accountable as well as a filmmaker, but it was more in line with my vision to cast people that could say they were part of a tribe or there was an indigenous tie in their lineage of being an American, but to their Native American heritage. So I did do that. And then having the Shinnecock Reservation was key. So Deani Brown was my consulting producer on all things Indigenous, from the family ceremony at the end, which, I was going to originally, I wasn't sure if I was going to do a naming ceremony for Jamie, the character, the surviving sibling, or if I was going to do the 1 year anniversary, which is very symbolic of letting the spirit go, releasing it. So the mourning, the grief and the way they did that. So we recreated a sage ceremony, which is extremely sacred to them. And, I promised that I couldn't show the full ceremony. We had to edit it up a little bit because it was so sacred. But everything about that, their wardrobe, the men's shirts for the contemporary family, to the music, it just really was like, when I watch it, I get chills because I know, it's so funny. Originally, I wrote this. I remember the scene. I wrote the scene where it was a funeral in St. Joseph's Church, which is a Roman Catholic church. And I put the contemporary family in a Catholic funeral saying goodbye. And I put the grandfather standing in the back of the church, and he was angry at the church. So I created but when I got feedback and was, in the rewriting of the script, where we netted out with was to do what was cultural and traditional, and how families today honor traditions from their families before. And also the 1600 scene. That is a language. One of the things that I wanted, because in my research I found, and I kind of knew it, but I didn't really know it. And then I spent time really understanding it and watching movies about it, where children were taken away from their families and put in boarding schools, typically run by, Catholic boarding schools typically. And they were basically stripped and punished to be able to use their language. They had to learn English.
It was to take the Indian out, correct?
Yes, take the Indian out of the man.
Yeah.
The Indian out of the man. That's right. So I spent a lot of time researching that. And in researching that, I thought that it would be an honor, because I couldn't find any translations written or in Google that I could do honor to. So I wanted to translate a language that was the actual language. I wanted the 1600s actors to speak the language. I wanted to translate it in English, but I also made sure that I put the correct spelling and translation to honor the language. Because where do you see the language written? You might hear it, but I don't think I've ever seen anywhere else, or if it exists, it's not a lot, where the actual translation subtitle is honoring I think it's called Algonquin language. And Shane Weeks, who plays the father, a very small part, but he plays Tahoma's father in the 1600s. He, along with Diani, was responsible for making sure that they authentically transcribe the language audio to say it, but then to write it so that I could put it on the screen. So things like that, I really made sure.
Wow, that's really great.
The other thing is I really took the time. I thought it was great because the young people of today do not have a tolerance for discrimination in the way that my generation was raised.
I just really, truly appreciate your time.
Oh, I have fun. I love meeting people. Diego is lovely energy through the virtual world. I can't wait to see him in person and give him a hug.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Maria. And thank you so much, Dee, for jumping on here and having this conversation with us. It's been fantastic. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to sharing this with everyone that I know, so that they can get to know you and what you're doing so lovely down there in the PA area of the world. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, we appreciate you, Maria. And we're looking forward to all your other projects you got coming out.
Thank you.
Welcome to the news.
Step right up, folks, because the weird is getting weirder. In the summer of 1909, love turned to tragedy in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, when Albert and Ida Mae Monroe, newlyweds of just 8 days, were found dead under mysterious circumstances in their home. There were no signs of foul play, no poison, no weapons, no suicide note, and their sudden and unexplained deaths left the community baffled and haunted for generations. Over a century later, local historian Elaine Decker revisited the case, and what she found was chilling. Other residents of the house had reported strange incidents, fainting spells, and unexplained unresponsiveness, all centered around one room, the small bathroom. One boarder even fainted in the bathtub, forcing the landlady to break down the door with an axe. Another took nearly an hour to regain consciousness after collapsing under similarly strange circumstances. Now, in 2024, the mystery deepens. Elaine Decker, again, this time alongside Adam Wilson, lead investigator of Ghost Quest, has spent weeks researching the eerie history of the Monroe House, and on November 27, just a few days ago, the two conducted their final investigation of the site, hoping to uncover the truth about what happened to Albert and Ida Monroe, and the strange phenomena that have plagued the house ever since. Their findings to be revealed in the December episode of Eerie Echoes with Ms. B. What secrets lie within the walls of this haunted home? You'll have to tune in to find out. And now back to the ever so eloquent Ms. B.
Well, my curious creatures, that brings us to the end of another spine-tingling episode of the Eerie Echoes show. A huge thank you to the talented Maria Capp for joining us tonight and for her dedication in telling the story of the Lady of the Lake with such care and respect. Maria's attention to detail, her efforts to honor the legend, and her thoughtful representation of Native Americans in the development, filming, and casting of her film are truly commendable. Maria, you've shown us that storytelling can not only entertain, but also preserve and elevate important cultural narratives. Thank you. And speaking of stories, let's revisit the chilling murder mystery from our Halloween special. In Williamsport, Pennsylvania, the tragic tale of Albert and Ida Mae Monroe continues to cast its ghostly shadow. Our very own Lycoming County historian Elaine Decker and Ghost Quest lead investigator Adam Wilson have been hard at work unraveling the layers of this haunting. From combing through historical records to physically tapping into the energies where these eerie events unfolded, they've uncovered some thrilling discoveries that I know will just leave you shivering in anticipation. But you'll have to wait until December's Haunted Christmas episode to hear all the hair-raising details. Trust me, it's worth the wait. In the meantime, don't forget to keep up with us on all your favorite podcast platforms and social media channels, Eerie Echoes Show. And if you want the full experience, which I would highly recommend, head over to our Eerie Echoes with Miss B YouTube channel. There you can watch tonight's episode, all our previous episodes, and dive deeper into the mysteries we explore. Trust me, you want to see the YouTube channel. Until next time, my darlings, remember to stay curious, stay spooky, and always remember to keep one eye open. You never know what might be lurking in the shadows.
Eerie Echoes with Miss B is a BAM Studios production. Hosted and co-produced by Bridget Callahan, aka Miss B. Narration by Diego Paul. Researched and written by Miss B and Diego Paul for Eerie Echoes. Produced, edited, mixed, and mastered by BAM Studios. Theme song composed and performed by Diego Paul. Distributed by BAM Studios Podcast Network.